What is going on, everyone? It is the end of the year 2020, thank God. And with that said, there are still a good amount of movies that I originally planned on reviewing for you guys, but never got around to it until now. These are 6 films that I watched over my break. I crammed them, and now it makes sense for me to review them because I can't end the year without talking about every single movie that I saw that came out in 2020. So in this video, I'll be doing 6 quick movie reviews for the 6 films that I just watched but never got the chance to review. Thankfully, I got to see most movies I wanted to watch this year. Of course, this was a limited year for movies because a lot of the films that were supposed to come out this year got pushed back to 2021 or later. So it was easier for me to see the movies I wanted to see because of the limited amount of films that we had. But there were a couple of films that I never got the chance to check out, even though I wanted to see them, like Underwater that came out last January. I never saw Bad Boys for Life or Unhinged, or even the newest movie that came out this year. I think it was called Greenland with Gerard Butler. There were a couple of movies I wanted to see this year, but never got around to it because it's too hard to see every movie, even in a year like 2020 where there are a limited amount of movies. Alright, let's get these rapid reviews started. The first movie I had to review for you guys today is Soul. It's the newest Pixar movie. It came out on Christmas Day on Disney Plus, and it has voice work from both Jamie Foxx and Tina Fey. A jazz musician finally gets his first big break in the industry, but soon after, he dies and learns what it's like to live the life of a soul. This is one of the best Pixar movies of the last 10 years. It's certainly better than Toy Story 4 and Incredibles 2. It just about rivals Coco, Inside Out, and films like those. I found Soul funny, heartwarming, unique, with great voice work, beautiful animation, themes that relate to all people. Because the themes of most films relate to only a specific group of people that are going through the same experiences that our characters are experiencing in the films. But in Soul, the themes that we have in this movie, they relate to all people. There is not a single person on this planet that would not relate to what this movie is trying to say. I don't want to talk too in depth about Soul if you have not seen the movie yet, and I highly recommend you go check it out. But one thing I wanted to talk about is that in the middle of this movie, it kind of feels like it's going to veer off into this uninteresting direction, but that never happens. The first half of this movie is a lot different from the second half, but neither half is less interesting than the other. The film constantly keeps the ball rolling. There is not a single dull moment in Soul. This is seriously one of the best Pixar movies of the last decade. I freaking love this film. And it's of course the perfect movie to watch during the holiday season. I am giving Soul a 95%. Wonder Woman 1984 arrived on Christmas Day as well, but came out on HBO Max as well as in theaters, with Patty Jenkins returning to direct alongside Gal Gadot and Chris Pine as the stars. So the year is 1984, 66 years after the first movie, where Diana goes face to face with 2 new villains, Max Lord and Cheetah. I am still a huge fan of Wonder Woman from 2017. It remains as one of my 10 favorite films of that year, and the sequel, 1984, was one of my 5 most anticipated films of 2020. When this film was first let out to critics to see, it was given a bunch of great reviews. The film was certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but then by Christmas Day, all the reviews that were negative came onto the platform, and now the movie is close to having a rotten score on the Rotten Tomatoes scale. So what's the reason for why 1984 is doing so poorly with a lot of audiences as well as critics at the moment? Well, I can kind of see where they're coming from. The first hour and 20 minutes of this film, nothing really happens. Hey, one positive to watching this movie at home, I watched it on HBO Max the other night. When watching films at home, you can see how much time you have remaining in a film as well as how much you already watched of the movie. In Wonder Woman 1984, I was able to see while watching this movie at home that the first hour and 20 minutes on the dot don't really lead up to anything. There aren't any spectacular action sequences. There aren't any notable moments. The first half of this movie doesn't really build up to anything of large magnitude. It's a slow burn. It takes a while for the events of this film to eventually unfold, and I'm sure for a lot of critics and audiences, that ticked them off. This movie is not the spectacle that the first Wonder Woman is. That movie has a lot more action, a better story than the sequel. Not saying that the sequel is a bad movie, I actually think I like it more than a lot of audiences and critics alike. The acting isn't bad. Gal Gadot, Kristen Wiig, Chris Pine, and Pedro Pascal are all passable. I liked each of them in this movie. Everything in particular going on with Max Lord in the film, played by Pedro Pascal, I liked a lot. He considers himself a loser. He doesn't think his son looks up to him as a role model. He's not proud of him in his mind. So Max Lord is trying to make that right by instead using this one object to get him riches and make him extremely powerful. I even got tearful during a moment shared between Lord and his son at the end of the movie, but we never see what happens to Lord in the finale of Wonder Woman 1984. It's not resolved. I have no idea what the F happens to his character. That was random. Honestly though, the last 30 to 45 minutes of 1984 aren't that bad. They're actually pretty entertaining. I like the finale of this movie. But like I said, it takes about an hour and 20 minutes for anything to actually happen in this movie. The first half of this film is very slow, and I'm sure a ton of people checked out after the first hour of Wonder Woman 1984. I don't blame people for that. Another thing looking back is it really necessary to have Steve Trevor back in this movie, played by Chris Pine? In the first film, I loved his character, and I was extremely sad at the end when he died. But in this movie, having him back, it almost takes away from his death in the first movie. It invalidates it to a certain degree. There's so much more I could say about Wonder Woman 1984. This movie is absolutely not nearly as good as the first one, so in that way I was disappointed, but this is not as bad of a movie as some people are saying it is. It's actually watchable. I feel like I need to watch this film a few more times in order to get a better understanding of how I really feel about it, but just to be safe, I am giving Wonder Woman 1984 a 59%. The Midnight Sky is the first of 3 Netflix movies I'm about to talk about, and it is both directed by and starring George Clooney. The world has been devastated and is on the brink of collapse as humanity only has a little time left on Earth. George Clooney's character has the job of communicating with humans who are away from the planet, and here he tries communicating with one group of astronauts who are unaware of Earth's disaster. I would say that Midnight Sky is a mix between films like The Grey, The Day After Tomorrow, maybe Gravity. You get a lot of different vibes from this movie, and it feels similar to other films you've seen before in the past that have similar plots. One of my greatest positives is George Clooney, who gives an emotional performance. This is one of his best performances of the last decade for sure. I also never once got bored except for the first 15 minutes, which were really slow, but this movie doesn't have a boring moment after that. I was actually engaged with the plot. I wanted to see what was going to happen next with both the astronauts and George Clooney's character. The film has great visual effects. If the Oscars happened in 2021, I could see this movie getting nominated for Best Visual Effects this year, but if it doesn't, well, I don't know what else you're going to nominate because there were barely any other movies with great visual effects that came out this year. I mean, maybe Tenet, but what else? This movie has to get nominated. And the ending is powerful. It touched me. This is an ending that I love. It's a beautiful way to end off a film like this. So I really love the ending of The Midnight Sky. Not to mention there are 2 twists at the end of this movie. One of them I did not see coming from a mile away. The other one, that's a different story. I'll get to that in just a bit. When it comes to my negatives though with The Midnight Sky, well, like I said, the first 15 minutes are about as slow as paint drying. It's not exciting stuff. I thought while watching the first 15 minutes of this entire movie was going to be really, really boring, but thankfully that was not the case. The Midnight Sky gets a lot better after the first 15 minutes. Plus, it's not the most original. It takes a lot of things from movies I've seen before that do it slightly better, hence why I made that comparison at the beginning of this review. Because of that, I kind of forget what happened in the middle of this movie. I can remember the first act, the third act, but the middle act, what happened there, I could not tell you. Okay, let's go back to the film's twist at the end. If you guys have not seen The Midnight Sky yet and plan on watching it, well, go to this point in the video so you can see where my next review is if you guys do not want to see any spoilers. At the end of the film, it is revealed that the girl who has been aiding George Clooney on this voyage the entire time is actually just a figment of his imagination. Now that caught me by surprise. That is supposed to be his daughter, who is in her younger form, because he never got to spend any time with her throughout her years growing up. But before that, the movie reveals that Felicity Jones is the present day version of George Clooney's daughter, and I'm not gonna lie, I could see that coming from a million miles away. Why else would they have Felicity Jones be such a prominent character in this movie? They're not just going to focus on a bunch of random astronauts for no reason whatsoever. Of course, she was going to be the daughter of George Clooney, so that was really predictable. I found that to be kind of stupid. I do think this movie is a tad bit underrated, though, by critics, so I'm giving The Midnight Sky a 61%. The Trial of the Chicago 7 came out on Netflix back in October. It has a loaded cast and was directed by Aaron Sorkin, who also wrote the film. And it's about a group of 7 men who were on trial in the 1960s after an encounter gone wrong with the Chicago police. This movie got a lot of hype when it came out on Netflix back in October, and I'm sure if the Oscars do happen this year, this movie will receive several nominations, and rightfully so. Aaron Sorkin is a great writer and a better director in some ways. In terms of the performances, these are some of the best performances from these actors and truly immaculate work done by them. These include Frank Langella, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Sacha Baron Cohen, to just name a few. Everyone, for the most part, in the Trial of the Chicago 7 is on their A game, especially those actors in particular. I also never found this movie boring. The film was riveting from beginning to end. It caught my attention. I wanted to see what was going to happen next. We have many tense courtroom scenes. This is thanks to Sorkin's sharp script. And the ending of this movie is so good. I wanted to stand up, clap, and cheer. That's how good the ending of this movie is. I was riveted by both the story and the script of the Trial of the Chicago 7, but I do have a couple of complaints with this movie. I've talked about this before with other 2020 films, including The Five Bloods and Mank, but no other film has tried to push more of a political agenda than the Trial of the Chicago 7. I'm not saying the themes of this movie aren't good themes and themes that you should take home with you, but this movie almost feels like it's trying to make you side with it so much to the point where it just bashes you over the head. There are better ways of doing this too. Detroit is a film that never really once felt like it was trying to compare the politics of the 1960s to the politics of present day, whereas the Trial of the Chicago 7 is constantly trying to remind you that the politics of the past are similar to the politics of the present, which honestly got really annoying after a while. And heading into this movie, you could probably tell it was going down a formulaic route, and yes, a lot of courtroom movies are the same pretty much, but I still enjoy watching them. For the most part, they are riveting, which is where this movie shines the most for sure. I'm giving the Trial of the Chicago 7 a 68%. The final Netflix movie I have for you guys is The Devil All the Time. This might be the best cast for any movie this year. It follows the people of a small town, West Virginia backwoods, and their disturbing yet discreet encounters with one another. While watching The Devil All the Time, there are many moments where my heart was racing. I had no idea where the movie was going. It's one of the most unpredictable movies I saw all year, and for that, I have to give this movie a ton of thanks. Obviously, the cast is loaded, and we get completely different performances from people like Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Bill Skarsgård, and Sebastian Stan. It's always cool seeing our favorite actors play characters that are completely different from anything else they've ever done before. In the case of this movie, all of these actors play crazy West Virginia backwoods people. It's also the kind of movie that feels like I'm the only person who's seen it. It has a small scale feeling to it while having a bunch of A-list actors, and for that reason, my viewing experience of The Devil All the Time felt a lot more personal. One of my biggest complaints with The Devil All the Time, though, is how this movie never goes down the most original route. It's not the most original movie. You've seen movies like this before where things that happen have happened before in other films. Not to mention that this movie is disgusting. It has disturbing imagery. It's not the kind of movie I want to watch more than once. One time is good enough for me with The Devil All the Time. It's certainly a brutal movie to say the least. I'm giving The Devil All the Time a 70%. The last movie I have for you guys today is Mulan, the 2020 remake of the original. It came out on Labor Day weekend, and they were charging $30 on Disney Plus for you guys to watch it. Being a remake of the classic Disney movie, we see a brave warrior known as Mulan who goes undercover as a male in order to defend the Imperial City. I was planning on watching the original Mulan leading up to this, but never got around to it because I had barely any time, so I went right ahead to watch this one. I think I saw the original before when I was very little. I either watched it once before when I was a little kid and don't remember, or I never saw the original Mulan at all. The Mulan remake got both good and bad reviews, just like Wonder Woman 1984. And surprisingly, this movie has some good character development. I actually felt something for a lot of the characters in this film. I got behind them. I was starting to root for them as the film progressed. I also really loved how this movie felt more realistic for a Disney live-action remake for an original animated Disney movie. Other positives that I have for Mulan is that the film definitely caught my emotions, the cinematography is beautiful in some shots, and the fact that there's no music in this live-action remake was actually a good thing for me. I don't like musicals. I don't like the songs in a lot of the Disney animated original classics. I never have liked music in film unless the music is really great, but that is few and far between. So I'm happy that they chopped all the music out of this remake because sometimes the music takes away from the story at hand. I did hear plenty of people complain that they cut out great characters from the original Mulan. I can't really comment on that though, since I have not seen the original Mulan probably in 15 to 20 years, so I gotta go ahead and watch it first before I can have any opinion on that. Sometimes the acting is stale though in this live action remake, and the CGI in a couple of scenes is flat out terrible. Just from watching this remake alone and not seeing the original in quite some time, I can say with full confidence that this is a solid B movie. It's not by any means a great movie. This is not one of the best Disney movies of all time. It's not even close. But it's still enjoyable enough for me to sit down, watch it every once in a while with some popcorn, friends, and just have a good time. There are some good action sequences, good character development. It's not at all a terrible movie. But since I barely remember the original Mulan, I can't say that this review is fully finished. I need to have the roadmap of the original film to see if this movie even comes close to holding up to the original. So I am giving the 2020 Mulan a 72% with an asterisk. Alright guys, those are my rapid reviews. If you also happen to see any of those movies over the last couple of months, be sure to let me know below in the comment section what your thoughts are of them. Next up, I will have 2 top 10 lists coming out for the end of the year. Get ready for both of those. It's pretty exciting stuff, guys, even though this year kind of sucked. If you're new to my channel, click the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.